Welcome to today's lecture. Today we are going to see about absorption of water. So last class we have seen about the introduction to crop physiology. We have discussed some generalized points. So we will move on to lecture number 2, that is absorption of water. So before discussing in detail about the mechanism involved in the absorption of water, we need to have some basic understanding regarding the soil water. So water is the major medium of absorption, and water is a key element molecule which is required to activate many of the important physiological response. One fine example is water is very much essential for the initiation of photosynthesis. The soil water can be divided into 5 main categories based on the availability of the water to the plants. And the first in the line will be your gravitational water. So as you can see in this picture, the gravitational water just drains right through the soil particles. So such type of a drainage occurs when there is a heavy rainfall. So a heavy rainfall causes the field to get into a saturated condition, and whatever the excess water we receive in a field will be drained straight through the soil particles. So the field becomes saturated as the water molecule displaces all the available air pockets between the soil particles, and these gravitational waters are not available to plants. So the plants can't absorb this gravitational water. So this water is only available to plants if we experience a continuous shower for may say 2 to 3 days. So if it is continuously showering, then this gravitational water may be available to the plants. So next in the line would be our capillary water. So this is the bulk of water that are even present after the draining of your gravitational water. So this bulk of water is present in a form of a film coating which which has a size lesser than that of the colloidal soil particles. And this thin film coating of water is maintained by the surface tension. So this is the surface tension that is existing between the water and the colloidal soil particles. So this is the main source of water that are readily available for plants to absorb. So as you can see in this picture, the area demarcated in whites are your the capillary water that are present in a film shape or in the form of film coating. So these are held between these microspores with the help of surface tension. So the third one would be the hygroscopic or imbibed water. So these are also held by the soil colloidal particles, but the only difference between the capillary water and the hygroscopic water is that the force acting upon the hygroscopic water is the adhesive force. So whereas in capillary water, the force acting upon was your surface tension. So this type of water is available to plants, but only in a small quantity, not like capillary water. So if a field condition is having a predominance in hygroscopic water, then it is an indication that the field is going to reach its wilting point, where the plants will start wilting due to the lack of water. The fourth one would be our runaway water. So in the case of any excessive rainfall or precipitation, we can see that the excess rainwater just gets washed away from the surface. Hence it can also called as surface runaway. And this water is not at all available to the plants to absorb. So this water can be seen in a flooded soil condition or in a flooded field condition, where we can see a continuous runoff of the excessive rainwater. The last one would be our chemically bound water. So here the H2O molecules will chemically combine with minerals such as iron, and it will permanently become unavailable to the plants. So how much water can a piece of land can hold? So it can be assessed by knowing the field capacity or the water holding capacity of a particular field. Field capacity is the amount of water that is being retained after a heavy rainfall or precipitation. Factors such as soil profile and its structure and soil temperature affect the water holding capacity of any field. For example, a sandy loam or a sandy soil will have very less water holding capacity due to its huge micropores. Whereas in case of clay soil, the field will have a more water holding capacity due to its minute microspores. So at field capacity, the water potential or the energy of the water would be negative 0.3 bars. Now another term related with the availability of water is your permanent wilting point or your wilting coefficient. So permanent wilting point is a measure of soil water that is present after the plants have wilted, and at this point there is no more water that is available to the plant. So there is no chance of a revival. So once the condition reaches the permanent wilting point, the plants will exhibit certain symptoms such as drooping, rolling and folding, as you can see in this pictures. So these three main symptoms will be visible in the field. So these symptoms occurs due to the loss in the turgor of the plant cells, or it will lose its osmotic pressure. So why do plants wilt? So as discussed earlier, the plants wilt due to the lack of available water, or the field has reached the permanent wilting point. So at that point the plants will start wilting. So another reason for wilting is that the rate of transpiration would be in excess of the rate of absorption. So the rate of transpiration would be in excess in conditions such as drought and also in summer conditions. So that's why we call the process of transpiration as a necessary evil. So now before going directly into the mechanism, we will see the structure involved in the absorption, the root structures that are involved. So we all know that the water is absorbed through the root hairs. So we call these clusters of root hairs as root hairs zone, or this RH zone, which is situated a little behind the root cap. So you can see that there is a elongation zone for the root and a meristematic zone where the cells will actively divide, and a root cap. So this root hair zone is actually present a little behind that of the root tip. So these root hairs are tubular projections that emerge from the outermost layer called the epidermal layer. And this combo of epidermis and the root hairs can also be named as piliferous layer. So this root hair zone or the root hairs are the major hotspot for the water absorption. So why it is the major zone for water absorption is that these root hairs are permeable to water and contain pectin and cellulose contents. So these pectin and cellulose contents are highly hydrophilic or highly water loving. So as the root elongates or the crop matures, the root starts growing downwards in search of water source or in search of nutrients. So as the root grows, the old root hairs will die and the new ones will form, and it will keep on absorbing the water. So there are two major mechanisms involved in the absorption of water. The first one is active absorption and the second one would be the passive absorption. The first one is further divided into two, namely osmotic absorption and non-osmotic absorption. In case of active absorption, the root cells are actively involved in the process of absorption, Hence, if the root cells are actively involved, the plants will spend some metabolic energy that has been produced from the process of respiration. But whereas in passive absorption, there is no need of any metabolic energy, as the root cells here are passive or inactive. And due to the inactiveness in passive absorption, the transfer of or the movement of water is due to the physical force acted upon due to the process of transpiration. So now in case of osmotic absorption, the movement of water from the soil region to the xylem is based on your conventional osmotic gradient or your conventional osmosis method. But in case of non-osmotic absorption, the movement of water from soil to xylem is against the osmotic gradient. So normally active absorption requires energy, and if it is in case of non-osmotic absorption, more amount of energy is required. Now for active osmotic absorption, so I have given a generalized a flow chart for the movement of water from soil to the xylem. So first of all, the water present in the soil moves to the cell wall of the root hairs and then to the plasma membrane, and from plasma membrane the water moves to the cortical cells, and from the cortical cells the water moves to the endodermis through a specialized cells called passage cells. As the movement from cortical cells to endodermis is not that simple due to the presence of this Casparian strips, as you can see in this picture. These Casparian strips are present in the endodermis region, so which are highly impervious to solutes and even water. So the movement of water from cortical cells to the endodermis require a specialized cells which is called as passage cells. So from the passage cells, the water will now move to the pericycle region, and from the pericycle, the water moves into the xylem. So such a movement of water from soil to the xylem is facilitated by this pressure gradient, this osmotic pressure gradient. So you can see that the flow of water or the water flow is from the region of lower osmotic pressure to the region of higher osmotic pressure. Now look into this picture. So this is your root hair. This is your root hair. So consider this to be your soil. Consider this red area to be your soil surface. So where the water is present. Now usually the soil region, this soil region will have a lower osmotic pressure. But in case of this root hairs, the root hairs will be having a region of higher osmotic pressure. So due to this pressure variation, the water will flow from the soil region to the root hairs. So this flow of water is facilitated by not only facilitated by osmotic pressure, but also due to the high diffusion pressure deficit and your suction pressure. So as there is a difference between the osmotic pressure uh, in the osmotic pressure gradient, the root hairs develop a high diffusion pressure deficit and a suction pressure, and these two, this DPD and SP, along with the osmotic pressure, facilitates the movement of water from the soil to the root hairs. So now as the water enters into the cell wall of the root hairs, the osmotic pressure, the diffusion pressure deficiency and the suction pressure present in the root hairs decreases. and due to the presence of water, the root hair cells will become turgid or become bulged. Now these cortical cells will have a higher region of diffusion pressure deficit, osmotic pressure and suction pressure when compared to that of the root hair region. Hence the water again flows from the region of lower osmotic pressure to the region of higher osmotic pressure. So by this same mechanism, the water moves from cortical cells to the endodermis, the so-called to the passage cells, and from that passage cell to the pericycle and to the xylem. This same osmotic pressure gradient is maintained. So once the water reaches the xylem, the water rises up to a certain height due to the root pressure. The root pressure occurs due to the surface tension that is prevailing between the water and the surface of xylem. So that's all about the active osmotic absorption. Now coming to the active non-osmotic absorption. As I said earlier, here the movement of water occurs against the diffusion pressure or the osmotic pressure gradient. So here the water flows from higher osmotic pressure to the lower osmotic pressure region. So here the water flow is in the opposite direction. So as I told, this requires extra energy. So usually this soil region will have a lower osmotic pressure when compared to the region of root hairs. But in certain soil conditions such as alkaline or salinity, the soil will have a higher osmotic pressure than that of the root hairs. So in such scenarios, this active non-osmotic absorption may take place. So now coming to passive absorption, as I told earlier, the major process involved is your transpiration. So this transpiration process creates a pressure in water in the xylem vessels that is present in the leaf region. Okay, the pressure is created in the xylem vessels that are present in the leaf region. Now this pressure is transmitted to the xylem vessels in the root through the xylem vessels that are present in the stem. So you can imagine the connection of the xylem vessels that is traveling from leaves, stem and to the roots. So now due to this pressure, the water rises upward to reach the transpiring surface. So the transpiring surface will be your leaves. So this tension or the pressure that is created by the process of transpiration maintains a continuous water column. So which enables the soil water to enter into the cortical cells through the root hairs, and ultimately it will reach the xylem and maintain the supply of water in a continuous manner. So in this process, the entry of water is only facilitated through the rapid transpiration process, and here the root cells or the role of root cells are only passive. So in passive absorption, we have seen that the water will move from soil to all parts of the plant through xylem. And this upward movement of water is known as ascent of sap. And due to this ascent of sap, the water will reach to all parts of the plants. So in 1894, Dixon and Joly postulated a theory known as transpiration pull and cohesion theory. So this theory tries to explain this upward movement of water from roots to all parts of the plants. So this very theory is the most accepted one in the scientific world, as it covers the two main principles, that is the transpiration pull and the adhesion and cohesion properties of the water. So as the transpiration occurs in the leaves, the water gets absorbed through the through the roots, and this will continue as the transpiration occurs in a routine manner. So this physical force that is caused due to the process called transpiration is known as transpiration pull. So that is the first part of this theory. And in the second part, there is detailing about the cohesion theory or the cohesion and the adhesive properties. So here you can see, so while that water is transferring from the roots to all parts of the plants, in the xylem vessels, you can see that this orange part is the xylem vessel, and this water molecules just other to these xylem vessels and also to each other, which involves the cohesion. So this facilitates this transpiration pull and the cohesion theory both constitute to the continuous water column that is being formed inside the xylem vessels. So up to now, we have briefly discussed about the mechanisms that are being involved in the absorption of water. So now we are going to discuss about three pathways that are involved in the movement of water molecules from epidermis to endodermis. So the first pathway is your apoplastic way of movement. So in this movement, the water moves through cell wall alone. But the only problem with apoplastic pathway is that the water can only move up to cortical cells. Because as you know, I have earlier mentioned that in endodermis we have a structure called Casparian strips which is impervious to water. Hence if the water movement is through cell wall, the Casparian strips will block the pathways, so the water can only travel up to the cortical cells if it is following apoplastic movement. The second one is your symplastic pathway. So here the water movement is through plasmodesmata. So plasmodesmata is a bridge-like structure which connects between two cytoplasm or adjacent cells, or it can be also termed as an interconnection of cytoplasm. So as you can see, the water is traveling through the root hair and it has reached a cell, and through the plasmodesmata it is moving from one cells to another. So third one is your transmembrane pathway where the water is moving through the cell membranes. So this movement usually occurs through the tonoplast of the vacuoles. So as we discussed earlier, if a plant is following or a root system is following apoplastic pathway, the water movement is restricted only up to the cortical cells and it can't move further due to the presence of Casparian strips in the endodermis. So at this juncture, the water is forced to move through these cell membranes. So that cell membrane is the tonoplast of your vacuoles. So such a forceful movement is necessary so that it can reach the xylem vessels. So what are the factors affecting water absorption? There are external factors and there are internal factors. So first one would be your available soil water or the available form of soil water. As we discussed earlier, the capillary form of water is readily available for the plants to absorb. Whereas the types of water like hygroscopic water, gravitational water or chemically bound water are not readily available for the root hairs to absorb. Now the second one would be your concentration of soil solution. So the concentration of the soil solution increases if the soil contains more amount of salts. So if the amount of soil or the concentration of the salts increases in a soil solution, then automatically the osmotic pressure increases. So as I have discussed earlier, in alkaline and saline soils, the osmotic pressure is higher than that when compared to the osmotic pressure present in the root zone. And such a high osmotic pressure in the soil environment will hamper or decrease the efficiency of water absorption. So the third one will be your soil air, or how well your soil is aerated, or how well the O2 content is in your soil environment. So in a poorly aerated soil, say in a flooded condition, the soil becomes poorly aerated, and in this scenario, the accumulation of carbon dioxide takes place and it will make the root zone physiologically inactive. And your fourth one will be the soil temperature. So water absorption is at its maximum, or it is at its maximum efficiency when the temperature increases up to 30 degree Celsius on an average. But if the soil temperature is too high or say too low as about 0 degrees Celsius, then the water absorption will be severely hampered. So under internal factors, the first one is transpiration. So we all know the importance of transpiration, as transpiration is directly proportional to the rate of absorption. The more the transpiration, the more will be the transpiration pool, which will facilitate the absorption of soil water through the root hairs. So the second one would be your root hairs. So root hairs are the first respondents. So which is the root hairs are the ones who will come in contact with the soil water at first. So a healthier root growth is essential. So and more number of root hairs are also essential, and the growth of root hairs and the healthiness of the root hairs is dependent on the soil condition and also the prevailing environmental conditions. So the third one would be your metabolic activities or the physiological activities. So these physiological activities could be hampered or retarded due to various conditions, maybe due to the presence of some chemical compounds in the soil, or due to these purely aerated soils also the physiology may be hampered. So hence, if the metabolism or any physiological activity of the plant system is affected, then obviously the water absorption rate will be very low. So what are the differences between active and passive water absorption? So active water absorption is due to the activities of roots, especially root hairs, whereas in passive water absorption, it is due to the activity of the upper part of the plant such as shoot system. Active water absorption involves two mechanisms, namely osmotic and non-osmotic, whereas in passive, the absorption is due to the transpiration that is happening in the upper part of the plant. In active absorption, the pressures such as osmotic pressure, the diffusion pressure deficit, and the suction pressures are involved, whereas in passive absorption, the tension or the pressure created by the transpiration pool is involved. In active absorption, the symplastic movement of water takes place in root hairs, whereas in passive absorption, both apoplastic and symplastic pathways occurs. So the apoplastic movement happens up to the endodermis, whereas the symplastic movement happens after the apoplastic pathway is over, so that the water can reach up to the xylem. So the evidence for active water absorption are the presence of root pressure and the bleeding and the guttation process that occur in plants. And the evidence for passive water absorption is that if we cut the roots underwater, the absorption of water will still continue. So it is a clear-cut evidence that in passive absorption, the roots are very passive or inactive. So only the transpiration determines the flow of water from the lower part of the plant to the upper part of the plant. So that's all about the differences between this active and passive water absorption. So thank you for listening. So that's all about this lecture, absorption of water. So next lecture would be regarding the translocation and transpiration process. So there were many hiccups in the narrations, like some pronunciation mistakes and grammar mistakes were there. So I will try to correct it in the next lecture. And sorry for the inconvenience caused. So see you in the next class.